Okay. All right. I went ahead and I'm updating the schedule a little bit here. I moved the due date out for Chapter 7 class activities and the case study out till next week, next Sunday. So another week on that. Because I'm probably not going to get through everything today, and I really want to spend some more time on the flex boxes and the grid stuff with you guys next week. Okay, because that's really kind of the way web design is going right now. I cover all this other stuff with like the floats and the 3-column setup, all that, just because those are kind of principles of foundations for web design. So it's good for you guys to know that stuff and be familiar with it. But really, when you're going to be going out and starting to work on websites, you know, if this is going to be something that you're doing with your career or classes down the road here, so some of your sophomore classes and junior classes and stuff, you're primarily going to be using flex boxes, and you're going to be using grid design. You'll probably also, there's a service called Bootstrap that I'll introduce that to you. I'll introduce Bootstrap to you guys later on this semester. But what that is, it's basically a big library of JavaScript and CSS that you can take and customize and build really nice, clean, you know, sharp-looking, responsive websites. So we'll introduce that, but then, like I said, down the road in some of the sophomore and junior classes, we get into more of that Bootstrap and CSS and the advanced CSS with that. So yeah, in the book, I know a lot of the sites we're working on right now, they look like they're from the early 2000s or something. So, but that's okay. It's good for you guys to learn the principles of this stuff, and so we'll get into some of the more I call it cleaner web design stuff that I like here next week. So I want to spend a good amount of time on that with you guys. All right, so we left off, we're going to start on 7.7 today, so page 331. And so we're going to get going on some of this mobile design stuff. All right, let me close this out. So you need to have your Chapter 7 files available. Okay. And let me open up brackets. This guy. There we go. Okay. All right. So 7.7, page 331. We're going to go ahead and create a new folder here called Query 7. So I'm going to open up folder Query 7, and I'm going to need to drop a few files in here from the Chapter 7 starter files. We're going to need starter 3, and then one of the images. So let me copy that in, and then I need Lighthouse. Yeah, Lighthouse, and that one there. All right. Okay, so let's go ahead and open that up in brackets. All right, let's see what we got so far. Okay, so one thing to notice here, we have these couple lines right here. Okay, so the viewport Remember we talked about this, width equals device width, initial scale equals 1. Okay, so we do that so when we're on when people are pulling this up on their phones, it doesn't shrink the entire website down. You know, we don't want it to bring it all the way down because we don't want people to have to pinch and zoom on their phones. Okay, so we have that that code in there. That's up in our head section. Okay, so we already have that in there. You'll need to make sure you have that on all of your pages from now on when you're working on like the case study and stuff. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to add in our media queries into our CSS, and that will set up the, so when we do shrink that screen size down, everything starts to kind of flow better. Okay, so we're going to go up here into our CSS, and we'll just add it here below the footer. So we're going to add at media only screen and, all right, and then in parentheses here, we're going to do max width. All right, we're going to set that at 1024 pixels. Okay, so these pixel dimensions, these are just what the book has. You can always play around with these if you want. Like I said, when we get to the grid and the flex boxes, that's where it's kind of nice because we don't have to worry about pixels, right? Okay, so move that over. Okay, and then we're going to add in a curly bracket here. Main, okay, so we're telling it for our main element here, the curly bracket margin left is 0. All right, and then we're going to do another one here for nav in our curly bracket, float none. And width, will we set that to auto? Curly bracket, okay. So a couple things to make sure they got here. We basically have these two lines here set inside brackets, and then for the values for each of these properties, they have their own brackets as well. Okay, so you need to have this bracket that wraps those guys. Okay, all right. So let's do a file save as, and we'll just call this index.html. And let's go ahead and preview that. Okay, so notice here when I start to shrink this down, okay, our nav here, it's starting to flow into more of that. In our main section, we go into that one column view, all right? Okay, so we're getting there. We got the initial steps going. All right, so now we want to add some more of these media queries, okay? So we want to kind of wrap and fit to the screen a little bit better. So we're going to do another media, we're going to take this one that we have here and we're going to add a few more things to it. All right, so above main, I'm going to add body margin 0. And let me just tab these over so keep them all in line there. And then for our ID selector wrapper, we're going to set that width to auto. All right, and then under our nav, we're gonna set some styles for our list elements or list items, unordered list, anchors, the nav anchors, H1, H2, and paragraph, okay? So what it's doing here, so to kind of explain what's going on, so we have styles up here for like body and wrapper and everything, right? So we already have those, but this is what the browser's reading when it's just kind of at the normal desktop size, okay? Once we add in these media queries, so we'll do another one here as well, where we have max width set up with a little bit smaller number. What it's going to do then is override all of these styles, and it's going to apply these ones instead, okay? So it knows when the browser screen width hits, you know, these certain pixel sizes, it's going to load in these selectors, element selectors and ID selectors, so on, instead of the ones that we already have up there, okay? You still need to have these, but we have to have these additional ones that style it for the mobile. All right, so let's add in nav list item. Okay, so again, we're gonna do display a little bit different. We're gonna do inline block. Okay, and we're gonna set up some different padding here of 0.5 M. Right, so remember for padding and fonts and things like that, we want to stick with either percentages or M instead of pixel sizes. All right, and then let's do one for nav, unordered list. Let's align that text in the center. And then nav anchor. Let's make sure we have border style none on that. All right, and then we're going to do some styles for the H1 and H2. And we want our font size, whoops, font size at 120%. And then for the paragraph, we want that font size 90%. All right, so let's go ahead and save that. If we look at our, okay, so notice what happened here. We got the headers and we switched from, okay, so we can think of this one that we're working on right now as more of like a tablet view, okay, for like an iPad or something. So the screen size is gonna be a little bit smaller. Okay, so we went from vertical nav, we moved the nav up here to inline. Okay, so it's going across. The header up there is smaller. Okay, and we're kind of wrapping the picture around there with the text. Okay, so think of this as like desktop, you know, for like your laptop view. Now we're doing tablet. Okay, so the next one we're going to do is we're going to create a media query for the phone, like kind of a typical phone size. All right, so let's start here. We're going to create another one of these at media. And only screen. And so the main thing to be aware of, we have to format these just like that for these media queries. And we tell it, this time we want a max width, type here, of 768 pixels. All right, so we're getting a little bit smaller here. And we'll go ahead and put in our brackets. Okay. All right, so let's we'll change the H1 and the H2. Okay, so now these styles are going to override the desktop ones that we have set up and this one that we just did for like more of a tablet view. Okay, we're going to do font size 100%. Okay, we're going to do paragraph font size in 90. All right. Okay, and then for this figure, because we have the our lighthouse photo, right? It's right here. We're using the figure element for that photo of the lighthouse. Okay, we're telling it for that element, we're going to hide it on the phone. Okay, so this is kind of normal. A lot of times we won't have as many photos show up on the phone. So we'll use display none to hide that, that element. All right, and then we're going to work on the nav unordered list, nav list items. And for all of those, we're going to set the padding at 0. Right. And we're also going to do a separate one here for nav list items. We're going to display block on those. Okay, because we want those going up and down. And then for the anchor element, for the nav, again, we're going to do display block. For the padding, we're going to have a little bit of padding on that. Okay, so this is for our links in our nav area. Give a little space around them, so 0.5 em and 0. Okay, so up and down, a little bit of space, no space on the sides. And then let's also do, to give this kind of a look of having buttons for that nav, we want to kind of divide it. So we're going to do a border on the bottom of each of those. 2 pixels, ridge, and give that divider a little bit of a color there. Okay, so let's go ahead and save this now and take a look. All right, so we got our kind of desktop view. Then we're shrinking down. Now we got our tablet view. Okay. And now if we go to more of the phone size, you kind of see now we've moved our nav in this vertical kind of alignment, give it kind of that button look there. We got rid of the photo and everything's kind of lined up. Okay, so this should show up okay on the phone. All right. So all it's doing is it's reading whatever the pixel size is on the browser and then adjusting and loading our different CSS styles accordingly. All right. Okay. So again, we have to have our different media queries, right? So set those up with the different pixel size. And again, these are just kind of what the book suggests for those values. You can always play around with those. And then the other thing that you need to make sure you have is just the meta viewport up here in the head section. All right, so okay, we're going to go now to 7.8. We're going to work just a little bit with some images, so like responsive images. So I'm going to close this out. And we're on page 334. So we're going to do some work here to have the images kind of load differently when they're in different sizes. So in my files, let's go ahead and create a new folder. Let's see what the book says. Let's call it Flexible 7. All right. And we need some photos in here. Header JPEG, pools JPEG, and starter 4. All right. So we got starter 4. Copy that in there. And pools and header. All right, so get those two. All right, so let's open this up in brackets. Okay, so right now, okay, so this is the file that we're working with. Okay, we're gonna adjust some of these photos so that they work better when we're kind of resizing the browser window for different sizes. Okay, so go into our code here. Let's look at the H1 selector here. Okay, so H1, line 21. All right, we're going to we're going to add in font size. Um, 300%. And padding. 5% and 0. All right, and we're going to get rid of this height declaration here. Okay, now we need to find the header. Okay, so line 18. And we're going to add another property in here. Background size. We're going to use the cover value. All right, and then we're going to go to, we're going to add in another, let's add in a image style. Okay, so just go down here to the bottom. We're going to add in an element selector for image. And we're going to have it set max width at 100% and height auto. Okay, so let's do a file save as. We'll save this as index. And let's take a look in the browser now. All right, so notice this photo here, it's sized a lot better within that sidebar. And then notice kind of what happens with the header as we kind of shrink down. Okay, so it's kind of shrinking with the, as I shrink this down, the image shrinks as well. Before it was just kind of cropping it. Okay, so this is just another technique that you can use if you have an image. The only thing to be aware of, kind of like it mentioned in the book, if you have, like if I had this text, if it was actually, if I did that as part of the image, so if maybe I set that up in Photoshop or something, sometimes when you get too small, the text starts to get hard to read. Okay, so that's kind of the only thing to be, or if you have a lot of like detail inside the image, sometimes you can lose that as it kind of shrinks down. Okay, but that's just kind of how you can get some of the images to be responsive as well. Just using the that background size cover, and then the for that actual image element, setting the width to 100, height to auto. All right, so let's go now to 7.9. Okay, let's close this guy out. All right, let's make another folder called CH7 picture. Okay, we're going to need to copy some files here from our chapter 7. Let's look at the starters folder, and we want to copy small, medium, large, and fallback. Okay, so we got those 4 files, image files. Oops, copy them here. There we go. And we're going to use, okay, I need that template2 file. Actually, let me just do something here. So I don't have to re-download that chapter 2 template file. I'll just strip out the code on this one. Okay. So what we're going to do, if you look in the book in that figure 7.27, right, it shows how we can get photos to, basically what it does is the size of this screen shrinks when it hits certain points, pixel points on the screen. It's going to load up a different file. Okay, so it's going to either load that large JPEG, medium JPEG, or small JPEG into the browser screen. All right, so we're going to do that. Okay, first we're going to create a, just make an H1 here. We'll just call it picture element. All right, and we're going to use an element here called picture. All right, so this is again another kind of newer, well, not new, but HTML 5.1 element that most of your browsers are going to recognize, the modern browsers. Something really old, some old Internet Explorer, it's not going to work, but thankfully most of those are not in use anymore. Okay, so we're going to use, inside of our picture element here, we're going to do source media equals, all right, and then within our quotes here, we're going to put min width of 1200 pixels. Okay, tell it, and then we're going to tell it what file to load. So our source set equals large.jpg. Okay, and then we're basically going to do this three times here. So I'm just going to copy that. We'll paste it. All right, so this next one, I'm going to shrink that pixel size. We're going to go down to 800 pixels. When it hits that size, it's going to load the medium JPEG. And then the smallest one here, when it hits 320 pixels, what it's going to do is load up small.jpg. And then we also need this line in here, image source equals fallback JPEG. Make sure we have our alt text here. Description, water wheel. Okay. So let's do a save as index. And let's preview this. All right, so here's our big one. Okay, so we have our bigger screen size, right? It's larger than 1200. So it's loading up that large JPEG. Okay, now if I start to shrink, okay, now I'm down to that minimum width of 800, so it loaded up medium. All right, and then if you watch as I shrink even more, now it's going to load that small JPEG because it's reading the pixel size of the screen. All right, so again, this is an HTML5 picture element that we're using to create that. Right, let's look at one more here, kind of doing the same thing. Except we're going to do it a little bit differently. Instead of using the picture element, we'll use that source set attribute. Okay, so we're doing the exact same thing. We're just going to code it a little bit different. All right, so let's strip out picture element. And so within this H1, move that guy down there. Okay, so so in the book here, kind of we're going to show it. Okay. Oh, wondering. I guess it doesn't have it in the book. Okay. All right, let's just start coding here. We've got image, source, equals fallback. Okay, and then we're going to do sizes equal 100% value width, so VW. All right, and here's where we use that source set. All right, so we got large.jpg, 1200 wide. And then we do a comma, and then we do medium.jpg space 800 pixels wide. You don't need the px, just do 800w. And then small.jpg space at 320w. And then we also have to include our alt description, some water wheel. All right. Okay, so this one we're doing image element. Let's title this index 2, save it in that same folder. All right, so there's the large. Then we go to the, hold on, it's not working. I forgot something here. Sorry, it's been a while since I've done this one. I'm thinking I'm missing some elements here. Oh. Got that guy down there for some reason. Okay, let's try it now and see. Okay, so you can kind of see what it does. It's not shrinking. Nice and smooth. All right, so it's basically what it is here. It's just another way of doing this image shrinking without the picture element. Okay. All right. Trying to get 110. Okay, I think we're going to stop there for today because I want to spend enough time on flex boxes and grids next week. Okay, so like I said, I moved the due dates for the case studies and the class assignments out till next Sunday. All right, so we're going to spend next week doing those, and so I'll go into Canvas and readjust all the other assignments for the next chapters. Okay, so don't worry about moving on to chapter 8 at this point. We're just going to continue on with chapter 7. Okay, so we'll keep doing that. The only thing that will be due, go ahead and get your quiz complete and done for chapter 7 by Sunday this week. Okay, so that's still due. And then, but don't worry about the other stuff. We'll keep working on that next week. Okay. Alrighty, have a good weekend, and we'll see everybody on Monday. See ya.